knowing that there's upstream tools to help, whether it's 4Keys or something like C2.ai, I think is the key to companies just being able to get going with something, right? Because as soon as you get going with something and then you start talking with your team, you'll start to learn the why that they are starting with. And then you'll be able to make more collective decisions about, what are the assimilated understanding of good versus, not ideal, right?
Hey, I'm Steve McGhee. I'm a reliability advocate at Google Cloud. I was an SRE for a long time, and now I help people build more reliable systems on the cloud.
Hi, I'm Kyle Campbell, founder of C2.ai. We are a modern development platform that helps companies measure the software developer experience. Been an entrepreneur and a self-taught software engineer for a long time, and love to help developers build internal developer platforms. I'm curious, like if we drill into capabilities, right? You talk about observability. One of the things that we think about a lot is the actual measuring of metrics like DORA metrics being a capability, to use that terminology, right?
Yeah.
What would you
Very meta.
perceive as like the current state of the art when it comes to measuring DORA metrics?
That's a good question. There isn't really a state of the art, right? Like it's entirely dependent on what you've already built. So it's dependent on your platform. So if you have a platform that you basically paid for, that someone, that you're getting through some tool chain, probably the one that comes with it is the best one to use. Like if it's present and complete. There's an open source one. There's just called 4Keys. And that the intent of that one is that you can just kind of plug it into anything. We've seen customers who just like shove everything into BigQuery and they just like construct these amazing, queries to give them some answers. So there kind of isn't a best way to answer it because it's so dependent on the implementation of your platform. So.
Yeah, and the tools and the actual integration points.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the things that you see companies struggle with most when trying to implement some form of measurement of their tool chain? Like, where do they usually get hung up as far as like trying to collect information that would then be useful in measuring the 4 key metrics?
I don't have a lot of experience in finding these, but the ones that I've seen have been like when it comes to change failure rate, is like how much of a failure does it need to be to call it a change failure? Like, is an incident where some VMs got kicked over, does that count as an incident or not? Like, does planned maintenance count as an incident or not? Things like that. So really, it tends to be around just like the definition of that abstract concept and how we write the math to do the measurement. Like, when does the timer start and when does this timer end? And that's kind of all up to you. Like the real point here is just to like make a decision and then just track that over time. And if you find that it's kind of not helpful because it includes far too much time that you don't have any control over, then you can adjust that over time, right? But it's the only thing I can suggest around that is don't bury that like decision like deep in the bowels of some code somewhere. Like, write it down, what you're choosing to do and why. And if the why is we just threw a dart, I don't know, we just picked a thing, like that's fine, just write it down. So that way later when someone decides like, well, I think we should change the start clock time to actually be this thing over here, they'll look at your rationale and they'll say like, well, did they pick this for a really good reason that we don't know about? And if it just says, oh, we just threw a dart, we just made it up, they'll be like, oh, great. Yeah. So they didn't know what they were doing. So let's just move it because this will be better. Right. So always document why you're making a decision like that so that the future generations don't have to like ask you, you just write it down and it'll be much more helpful.
Yeah, we see that a lot with the deployment side of measurement. The other thing that we also see with the change side is very similar. Where does it start? Where does it end? Should it start at the conception phase when the Jira ticket is open, or should it start at first commit, or should it start at the pull request? I mean, I think this is going to be a debate for a long time, but I agree with you. The point is to choose something, and to the extent that teams understand what you've chosen to choose, what has been chosen. I think that is very important. I think the balancing act that we've seen from there is it can be really difficult because you want to some degree assimilate behaviors to be able to get some level of measurement. But if you over assimilate behavior, you're not actually empowering teams to do their best work because we know most teams work differently. And I think to further make that more complex, to your point about DORA not being great for an individual versus a team, there's even certain types of work that we might do as a developer. Like, let's talk about Git. Some developers open their branch right away. Some developers will work locally. So these become very difficult problems to unpack, I find, right? But knowing that there's upstream tools to help, whether it's 4Keys or something like C2.ai, I think is the key to companies just being able to get going with something, right? Because as soon as you get going with something and then you start talking with your team, you'll start to learn the why that they are starting with. And then you'll be able to make more collective decisions about, what are the assimilated understanding of good versus, not ideal, right?
Yep. Don't let perfect be the enemy of done, right? So you got to, just
It's a great
start
way
with
to
what
say
you
it.
got, right? And
Yeah.
measure
Yeah.
something. If you want to learn more about DORA, check out dora.dev. And you can join our community as well. There's a URL, dora.community, which is an actual URL. You can type it into your browser. And where we meet up a couple times a month to talk about DORA and how they're adopted within communities and organizations. And then keep a lookout for Ask Dora. I call it Dora Bot. But we have an LLM that's trained on all of the DORA material for the past 10 years, and you can ask it any question you'd like to better understand all the material within the DORA reports over the years. And don't forget to check out the Accelerate book as well. It's 10 years old, and it still rings true.
If you're looking to advance your CI/CD practices and get DORA metrics automatically through that tool, check out C2.ai. We will help you set up your CI/CD process to automatically collect and search and report on the DORA metrics that come out of your CI/CD practices. And then you can use those and compare them with the word of your team to understand how to continuously improve over time. I want to say a big thank you to Steve from DORA for joining us, and we'll see you soon.